Hey, Randy Joe here, and welcome back to Dance December, the series where throughout the month of December, we are listening to nothing but dance albums. And of course today, we're going to be checking out an album that was suggested from a fan in a previous video. They recommended it, I think, on a couple of videos. They were waiting very eagerly, it would seem, for this one. And I'm pretty excited to check it out, as I do know the hit from this one. And that, of course, is for the album World Clique by Deee-Lite. Released in 1990, this is a 12-song record sitting at 48 minutes. And of course, the biggest hit here is Groove is in the Heart. I've heard this song many, many times. I feel like it is fairly popular. You still hear it on the radio today. And you actually hear it, and at least in my area, in a lot of grocery stores. I'm not sure why that is, but it does seem to have some sort of popularity just in the general public. That being said, the rest of the LP seems like it's going to be full of some gems, seeing as the lowest song here only has 288,000 streams, which is quite small in compared to Grooves in the Heart's 228 million. That being said, I don't know too much about this record aside from the fact that it is, an early 90s dance record. The album cover is incredibly campy, one would say, definitely dated. However, I really love this era of late 80s kind of 90s aesthetic that was as colorful and as tacky as possible, trying to do so much all at once, while at the same time feeling like it is saying absolutely nothing. I love this cover. I'm not bashing it. Trust me, I do think this is very charming in its style, which I feel like nowadays you don't get something like this that often. Also reminds me of a lot of the stuff you'd see in the early 2000s on like Teletoon Network and such like that. Nickelodeon, perhaps. Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. Point is, this record is from the 90s, 1990 to be exact. So I'm expecting to hear, a bit more of a vintage dance sound. Let's kick it off with Deee-Lite Theme. Oh, and I know Mr. Herbie Hancock had a hand in this song right here, who I'm a big fan of. I like these horns. The way it's kind of sampled and reinterpreted. I'm expecting more of a sample kind of focus on this LP. I mean, the song, just like it says, it clearly a theme for the group themselves. Definitely a bit of a hip hop kind of influence as well, very evident on this, as well as maybe even teetering a little bit into trip hop. But maybe that's just the hip hop elements, especially those drum breaks, like classic 90s rap. That sounds familiar. I don't know why. I don't know if that's a sample from a well-known cut, perhaps. Here's Good Beat. That theme, really just kicking it off. Bit of like an R&B kind of a soulful vocal here. Who is our vocalist, I wonder? Lady Miss Kier Kirby. If that's not 90s, I don't know what is. Bit of a lounge, sort of, with a xylophone on here. Very gentle. Hear that bass? Picks up. And a slow descent. I like that. Nice and kind of deep in there. Oh. The buried deep in there is like a very quick cut of a vocal. Almost like the end of a sample of some sort. Very minor, very small, but I like it. It adds just a touch of flavor. Kind of reminds me of Avalanche's. Incredible group, by the way. Oh, great piano, great bass line there too in the background. Nice little sampled elements throughout. Oh, here's the bass and piano working together. Ooh. This again, that lounge aspect, very cyclical. A little bit of scatting, perhaps. A little unexpected, but go off. It's like some form of scatting for sure. It's a little silly, definitely a little campy, but I loved how fun that track is overall. It's a nice groovy track, a good beat like they suggest. Honestly, no complaints on it. I think at worst it's very 90s, but personally I love that whole vibe, that whole aesthetic. It's got a classic dance feel, very energetic. Here's Power of Love. And I like the piano on this LP so far. Not sure if it's all sample work or maybe we got ourselves a piano. Can't seem to find it. In a lot of ways, this feels like a precursor to a lot of the stuff you'd hear in the 90s, such as drum and bass and breakbeat. I feel like this is, kind of sharing some of the DNA of the larger sort of 90s techno, dance, EDM, whatever you like to call it, that whole fusion of sounds. Deee-Lite, I will say, production-wise, maybe not as current as some people may expect, but a very dynamic sound they have, and even without the vocalist, I think would hold their ground here. Not that she's a bad vocalist or anything. I'm just saying, like, just purely on instrumentals alone, I feel like that is really where all the meat is. I like this one. It's much slower in its tempo, a little bit more gradual into these drops. Ready? Not as rewarding as I was hoping there. I'm not gonna lie. I thought that was gonna be a bigger drop. Tales as old as time. Really, the power of love. We've heard it once. We've heard it a million times. I really like that. Is that some sort of sample? Oh. I like those sort of funky guitars that are coming in over top of that piano. Very much a track that is almost entirely focused on that piano that's being, you know, kind of doing the heavy lifting here. It's a little skittery, kind of across the board. Nothing to really say about that one. A bit of a gradual track, a bit slower. Definitely not my favorite though. I like the piano though. That's the title. Try me on, I'm very you. Maybe as a way to say, give me a shot. Oh. There's that classic sort of a 90s hip hop kind of drum sample, right? You can hear how thick that is. Oh. This one's got a very funky kind of prominent bass licks on both sides. Oh. Love those horns sliding in too. Nice and syrupy and warm. Very sweet. And very quick little bursts. She's got kind of like a 60s kind of soul flair to her. I wonder how much influence she took from a lot of the classic sort of 60s acts, especially the female vocalists of the times. You know? It's reminding me of like Aretha Franklin. You know? That kind of era. Oh. I love this breakdown. Completely, you know, like a beat switch. Oh. Damn, that was smooth, that whole section there. Just gorgeous. This track's still going. It's still evolving. Completely sounds completely different than that halfway mark. Oh, and his horn. A lot going on here. And was that a male vocalist? We even had a quick, brief guest appearance there. Maybe one of the other Deee-Lite members. I don't know. This is a great track. Definitely the most kind of grand and dynamic track so far. A really great array of instrumentals on that one. Great beat switches. Love the different kind of journeys we went on with that one. Some of it felt very kind of lo-fi and DIY in its production, while other sections were certainly given a lot more polish. I think stylistically this thing is much more grand than the previous tracks we've heard so far. Great track. Here is Smile On, Carrying It On, 4 minutes. That last one, 5 minutes, but it pads out that time quite well, too. That guitar is really reminding me of Fame by David Bowie. Or is it Let's Dance? I can't remember. Why am I mixing them up? Fame or Let's Dance. It's one of them, but it reminds me of it. That guitar lick, very distinct. Oh. I like this very weird metallic spiraling sound. That was trippy. I really like this one too. Very kind of low-key, mellow, and a sweet sentiment. That guitar lick sounds very similar to Bowie, but man, everything else here though, very just like good vibes all around kind of track. Oh, and we're back with this. I love that drum sample too. It's so crisp, so very clearly a sample, but it just sounds great. Love the way it's chopped. Again, there's like a roughness around the edges on this track, or on this album I should say, that's making it. Beautiful track, just about positive vibes, good attitude, passing on a good smile, which honestly, great sentiment, just very sweet and very kind of laid back, chill track. I love it. I love that track. I really love the guitar work too. I love everything about it. I think that might be, I want to say that's my favorite track, but I said that about the last one. So far, this album, very solid in terms of just having a nice kind of throwback sound to it. I mean, at the time, obviously not as throwback, but, you know, in today's day and age, this thing feels, you know, a little bit primitive, a little bit more stripped back in a sense, but I like that. I like just how kind of humble it sounds so far. Here's What Is Love for the next one.
What is love?
Love this album. Seems to be about kind of love, positivity, good vibes. A very kind of 70s, 60s-esque ethos so far. Very different from the 90s sort of nonchalant, not caring sort of attitude, though. I'll say that.
What is love?
Oh, this one's kind of a deeper tone to it, darker.
I think I know what love is.
Interesting vocal samples as well. Huh? Sorry, sir, what was that? Love that effect. Oh my goodness.
I think I know what love is. I think I know. I think.
Such a simple set of lyrics, but the way that they're playing with it within the track and the production along with it, very inventive. very creative. It's not just... Nothing about this track feels simple. They're really like stretching out the simplicity of these lyrics by mutilating them in such a way too.
What is love?
Oh, here's our main girly.
Love is love.
Very playful lyrics, very silly. You know, just having fun is the main ethos from the album. Oh, and shouting out their band name with such an ease with those lyrics, sliding it in.
To find out, is there really such a thing? Right.
Wow. Halfway through the album, that one, What Is Love? Deserving of its 4 million. If anything, deserves more, because I loved just how forward thinking it was. Again, for 1990, this record does feel a little primitive, but at the same time, you know, you don't hear too many tracks kind of going in this direction nowadays. It just feels very bold for its time at the same time. Simple, yet very dense, well arranged. Also loved the kind of playfulness in both her vocals and the sampled vocals, the way they were mutilated. Honestly, a great track. Here's World Clique, the title track. And I love the chopping up of the samples too on here. I'm not too well versed in dance music, you know, 90s prior. So I think this might be the earliest dance record I heard of, but I'm really loving its distinct tone. They belong everywhere. They cannot be confined. They're free from constraints. Okay. Once again, a nice little explosion of sound. Oh, we got a bit of rapping from our female vocalist here. Oh, for some reason this is reminding me of this is such a weird comparison. The Malcolm McLaren album Duck Rock. If you've heard that album, this is a kind of a weird comparison. It's like world music, dance music that encompasses a bunch of different genres, and it does feel very kind of almost like a mismatch of samples, like a bunch of different ideas being thrown into a pot and kind of just thrown out there. Similar to what I'm hearing here. Not that this is a bad thing, mind you, but I just like how much we're getting in terms of dynamic sounds, how much we're hearing different samples. Just everything is, in a sense, kind of feels like these random pockets. Not too much to say about that one. Not my favorite. Definitely not my favorite. But I do think it shows the cleverness of their production. Here's ESP. I love the way that ESP is kind of sucked into the sound. again, rapping. You don't really see too many female rappers back then. You know, I can't name any back in the 1990s. Queen Latifah, I guess one could say. But aside from her, you know, most of them came later in the 90s. Shout out Lady Miss Kier Kirby. Is that how it's pronounced? Either way, Kier Kirby. Shout out to her, because honestly, breaking a mold for sure with these like kind of brief little rapping elements. I would love a whole verse, but take what we can get. Wah wah wah. Was that the good and the bad and the ugly being sampled there? Incredible movie, by the way. Perfect 10. Kind of like a supernatural element to this one, especially given the themes. Yeah, there's more of those kind of old school raps. God. I'm loving the campiness of this record. There's something about it. It's got a lot of charm. Just seeped right into its DNA. We even got the Monkees being sampled here. Shout out the Monkees. And of course, Bewitched. A lot of creative sample work on here for sure. A great track. Honestly, love it. Love the supernatural elements. Loved the good, the bad, and the ugly sample too. A very brief moment used there too. You know, quickly recognizable, but just a quick 2 seconds clip. His Groove is in the Heart, which Groove is in the Heart needs no introduction. The biggest hit here. Honestly, I'm getting strong Avalanches kind of vibes from this record. Especially with this one having a bit more of a disco flair on it. Oh. I've always loved that chopped up eye. Just, it's so vintage. It's so classic. It's iconic at this point. Oh, it's like a slide whistle. Hilarious to me. And this one, again, has that classic disco 70s groovy flair. Certainly working within the lyrics as well. But it's super danceable. It feels like a track that should have existed in the 70s, transported to 90s production. It's mind-boggling. I love the production on this one. I love just how vivid and explosive the production really is. Even like just like very microscopic moments. Like that. It's quick. Makes a huge difference. Now lyrically, we're gonna groove to Horton Hears a Hoo Hoo. Why? I don't know. Shout out my man Dr. Seuss, I guess. The world's first rapper. Oh. And I had no idea he was on here. Just saw it before we started the video. Q-Tip, the man himself, from none other than A Tribe Called Quest. Before they would really take over in the 90s.
moves like a maze. All inside of me, heart especially, hilt of the rhythm, where I wanna be. Come on, flowing, glowing with electric eyes. You dip to the dive, baby, you'll realize. Baby, you'll see the funk inside of me. Baby, you'll see that rhythm is a key. Get with it, can't think, quit it, stomp on a stoop when I hear some blue playing pop pipe. Follow her to shoot, baby, just sing about the groove. Sing it.
Very smooth on those rhymes there. As always, Q-Tip, master of the flow. Oh. Oh. Got a little kind of James Brownish with this kind of soulful horn here.
Come on, y'all are crazy, man.
Grooves in the Heart. Honestly, probably the best track on the album so far. I feel like might be a bit of a basic pick given the popularity, but in terms of production, the inventiveness of it, the incredible layering and arrangements of them, just how forward-thinking a lot of the kind of production concepts are on that record. Beautiful. And also, Q-Tip coming in there, slides in beautifully. And of course, our main vocalist, Kier Kirby, she is, a very groundbreaking and forward-thinking individual in the rap scene in a sense, because, I can't think of many other female rappers at the time, and to achieve such a massive success, shout her out is what I'm saying. Here was Who Was That? Grooves in the Heart. Mind-boggling song, honestly. What is this, Mr. Game & Watch being sampled? Am I crazy? It kind of sounds like it. I don't know why, but this is such a hilarious passage to me. We got like a Goldilocks story going on here. Someone in my kitchen munching out peanut butter. Personally, not a huge fan. She didn't seem too concerned about this intruder breaking in and taking a bath and eating peanut butter, but seems like they're just looking for a good time. I like this kind of like glitchy kind of Mr. Game & Watch sample that we're hearing throughout so far, if it's a sample. I really like its melody, but other than that, this track isn't as, inventive or as interesting to me so far. But to be fair, it did come after Grooves in the Heart, so this is really getting the ugly friend effect, where, the other one was just so great that suddenly this one looks even uglier. Or just not as appealing. This is like very much a storytelling track so far, I'll say that. Seems like it just repeats the lyrics. Love this very kind of explosive and vivid guitar on the right side that we've been getting. It's just kind of repeating itself at this point. Bit of a too much of a loop for my liking. I feel like the track itself just got duplicated. There's that guitar again, though. That sounds like Bowie. Interesting track. I feel like this is, this is a fair comparison, but the Avalanches, another sample-heavy, dance-based kind of group, did the same kind of concept in, I believe, 2016 with the track "The Noisy Eater." That's an incredible track. same kind of concept, I feel like, or at least similar. This one kind of just repeats itself. If you want something that is similar in tone of somebody who's just on a rampage to munch, check out Noisy Eater. Again, this one maybe just a little bit more primitive in its execution, whereas maybe because I'm comparing in my head already so much, Noisy Eater is such a great track. But here's Deep Ending. Let's keep going. Love the kind of fast-paced tempo that this one's kicking off with, but an eerie instrumental overall. I just got it. I'm deep ending. Depending. I think they're clever with that one. Nothing too much to say about this one. Honestly, it's not doing much for me. I feel like Groove in the Heart really peaks the album to a point where anything after it doesn't really live up to it. Honestly, nothing to really say about that one. Definitely one of the more bland cuts. I do feel like this album could be trimmed slightly for a tighter cut. Maybe end it on Groove is in the Heart. Or maybe put Who Was That before Groove is in the Heart and then end it with Groove is in the Heart. Because I feel like that is such a peak of a track. I feel like it's such a climax in a sense. Really feels like all hands on deck with that one with guest stars. So, I don't know. Grooves in the Heart's really building this thing up. Here's Build the Bridge to close it out. No lyrics on this one? Do we not have our vocalist? That's a shame. I feel like she does a great job. Also a social, environmental, and human rights activist. Wow. Shout out Lady Miss Kier. A trailblazer. Okay. We'll let them cook with this one. I feel like they're working on something here. This would have been a decent closer too, right after Grooves in the Heart. Just like a come down from such a peak. Oh my god, it's like we're traveling all around the world with this one. Maybe building the bridge of cultures. I like this. This main synth here. Very futuristic in tone. I like this one. It's a nice come down after the rest of the album. I'd maybe trim some of the fat from the LP, such as the last track, but hey. Can't all be winners. We'll save that for the end. And that does it for Deee-Lite's 1990 record, World Clique, which I gotta say, all in all, this is a pretty brilliant record. Very much feels in a lot of ways ahead of its time, but also still feels a little dated, very campy in a sense, which I personally do enjoy the kind of silly, campy, bizarre nature of it so far. Especially the album cover perfectly, I feel like, captures the kind of music here. It's kind of like patchwork in some sense, where it's not like completely polished. It is not the most pristinely produced album I've ever heard. Grooves in the Heart is probably the most, inventive, off the wall, and well polished that they ever get on here. But even the cuts that aren't as well polished, I feel like have a nice charm to them, a nice kind of classic early 90s aesthetic tied to it. A great sense of theme, too, throughout this thing. Very positive vibes, very much a kind of love-focused album. Loving the world, loving the people, spreading positivity seems to be the main concept that I've gathered with most of these tracks. And sometimes play around with a little bit of the supernatural, such on tracks like ESP, which is a nice, fun little cut. Who Was That was a little disappointing, I will say. Reminds me of The Noisy Eater from The Avalanches, which I personally prefer tenfold. And then Deep Ending, I thought was quite lackluster. Power of Love didn't hit me that hard, but I'm sure that will grow on me. Other than that, though, I will say the bulk of this record, other than track, like I said, 10 and 11, fantastic. I would maybe remove those, and in the end, you'd have closer to a 40-minute record, make it a bit tighter. That's just personally what I would do. But even aside from that fact, this LP is fantastic, has great vocals on here from none other than Miss Kier. Don't know if I'm pronouncing Kier right. Huge fan of what she does on here, because production-wise, this thing doesn't really necessarily need a vocalist, but she does elevate it significantly by adding her own kind of spin and flair on it, and having just a nice kind of classic soulful, almost like Aretha Franklin-esque vocal kind of aspect. It feels like a nice tribute to kind of 60s, 70s soul, which I personally am a fan of her delivery upon. But other than that, not much more to say about this record. It is, in my opinion, well worth a listen if you're interested in getting into dance music, which I, of course, am, given the fact that we're doing Dance December. But I definitely want to hear more music like this, 80s, 90s sort of dance music, a little bit more primitive, a little bit more stripped back, maybe not as polished as something we'd get today, but certainly shows a lot of the roots and ideas of what's to come. But that does it for today's video. If you liked the video, please hit like and subscribe to follow along in listening to different dance albums throughout Dance December. The next album we will cover on the channel is going to be Sound of Silver by LCD Sound System. As always, my name is Randy Joe. I appreciate you watching, and I'm signing off.